to the No BS Short-Term Rental Podcast, an unfiltered look into the global vacation and short-term rental industry.
I'm Mateo Bradford.
And I'm John Stokinger.
And this is our podcast. We bring the right people to the table at the right time, giving you an inside view and take on the short-term rental industry like no other podcast can.
Happy 2022, Mateo. Good morning. How are you?
Happy 2022, good brother. I am fantastic. Great, man. Rested, ready to go.
You look rested. Like you're looking a little haggard. I mean, for those that don't, watch on the video, you were looking a little haggard, at the end of December. But I'm glad you got some rest. You look good. I
look a little haggard. Really haggard? Is that where we're going in 2022?
Yeah, that's where I went.
Haggard?
I think I was, embellishing the truth a little bit here. But
see, I gotta get back on it, man. I'm slacking. If I looked haggard, good.
No,
I mean, you could say a million other things. Tired.
I'm just kidding, and you know that. But truly, a couple weeks off or a week and a half off for me. I put a little bit of time in, working on go-to-market strategy, that kind of stuff for 2022. I probably added 10 pounds of Christmas cookies and fudge and
oh yeah, no doubt.
And holy hell, I'm feeling that. I'm ready to get back into a more normal routine here. But we're excited. It's season 2, episode 5, the first episode of 2022, and we have an amazing guest. We've known him for a while, and everyone should know of him here. The exciting thing. I've called on him in various roles leading up to where I am, and I'm sure I'll be calling on him soon again with my current role. But we have the one and only Mr. Mike Harrington, CEO and owner of Carolina Retreats. Thanks for joining us today, Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Yeah, appreciate it. I don't think I deserve that intro, but thanks. I think probably most people don't know who I am, which is fine. And I probably talked to everybody in the vendor space at one time or another, that's for sure. But hope you guys are good.
Yeah, for sure. It's been I've known of you obviously when you were doing before it was Carolina Retreats, and then you kind of rebranded, and then there's some different acquisitions, and obviously we're going to be here and we're going to learn about you and your story, and we want to hear from you. And obviously, anyone that listens to our podcast, the whole goal out of this is we'd love to get a little nugget that you're not sharing with some other podcasts, maybe something cool and exciting. But for those that don't know, like where Mike lives is my favorite place in the whole world to go vacation. We've gone as a family down there 4 separate times. Spent one time we were there 2 weeks. Love the Topsail area. Love North Topsail. Love Wilmington beaches. Like all of that. If you haven't been, you need to go. It's a different feel than it's. And what I love about Topsail and North Topsail in general is it's not necessarily condos. It's all homes, and it's really intimate, and it's still small town feel. And that's what I love, and that's why my family loves going there, because we're not really hustle and bustle.
It's a working man's beach. That's what it is.
Yeah.
For everybody. Yep.
So let's talk about that. And how did you were the CEO and general manager of Resort Really previous to this, and you were at vacation rental manager at Hatteras Really. I mean, how did you stumble in? Because no one gets up and says, you know what, I'm going to get into vacation.
Yeah, I mean it's been crazy. It's been a long kind of path. I mean, I started in, I think it was 2005. I was in my 20s. I was just out of graduate school. I went to East Carolina University, played baseball on scholarship. Stayed through to graduate school, got an MBA, and I was like, finished with that and said, I have no idea what I want to do. Like zero, right? And so, just like everybody during that time period in mid 2000s, out of school, you're just going, all right, let's hop on monster.com and see what's out there, you know, and you're just kind of scrolling through, you got a nice little resume prepared. So just started firing some stuff out there. And my girlfriend, wife now, we were living together, and I had thrown some things out there, completely forgot. I saw an ad for real estate management at the beach. So I'm like, wow, that's cool. You know, like real estate. I'm a surfer. I know where this is. Let's just send it out there. Maybe somebody will call me back. So, you know, lo and behold, a couple of weeks later, I get a phone call, and it was Stuart Pack, who now is my vice president and COO. And he was vice president at the time at Havers Realty, which was owned by Stewart Couch, legendary figure in the vacation rental industry. And they said, hey, we got your information. We'd love to talk to you. So it was an assistant property manager role. I drove where I was living in South Carolina at the time, drove all the way to Hatteras. Had no idea what to expect. Didn't know anything about vacation rentals, just knew about real estate in general. Said, okay. So I started going there, and I was driving down, and, you know, it was nothing but sand dunes and sound. And then all of a sudden you see these mega houses.
Right.
And I'm going, Jesus, this is pretty nice, you know, and pull up to the office, start talking to them, you know, and as I kind of dug into the interview and we were digging into the business, you know, I was like, well, hold on. So you don't own all these houses. You just manage them for other people and they pay you. They're like, that's right. I'm like, well, that sounds pretty awesome. You know? So at the time, I think they were managing about 400 or so properties, you know, big operation. And, yeah, they offered me a job on the spot. It was just an assistant manager job. I think it was like $14 an hour. You know, I had an MBA. I was like, screw it. Why not? You know, let's do it. So my girlfriend, I told her, I said, hey, do you want to move to the beach? She's like, let's do it. So that's what happened, man. And we fell into it. Luckily, you know, Stewart Couch, who's a big mentor in my life, kind of took me under his wing, kind of showed me what this was all about, took me to my first VRMA, which really kind of launched my perspective in the industry and got me involved in that.
Where was that? Which do you remember that VRMA? Do you remember that one?
I'm pretty sure it was in Atlanta, but that was when they had to move it because of Katrina. I think that's what it was. I think something that, you know, stirs a memory in my brain. But yeah, it was great. You know, I went to that and met some people. I said, wow, this is pretty neat. People do this all over the place. And that's what got me into it, you know, and I just, you know, one thing led to another role, another position. And I just, you know, stuck to it. You know, it's longevity, you know, it's not, you know, how fast you can go out of the gate. And, you know, I'm a typical 15-year overnight success in this business.
Yeah. I
had a question for you then about it saying that you're a 15-year overnight success, right? That's, you know, that's the realistic part of it, right? Everything, you know, the optics from the outside looking in, you know, make it seem much quicker than that. It's not easy, right? And I'm sure you've learned a lot and have grown a lot during your time in this space. What kept you here? You bright future, MBA, took shit pay in the beginning to come into an industry that's obviously had a grasp on you. You know, what kept you here?
You know, you're right. I mean, it's the most successful people I know in this business, and I know a lot of people have been doing it for decades. They didn't start in 2018, right? I mean, some of that's there. You know, people, you know, they stumble into a great opportunity, do a great job, and no disrespect to anybody who's done really well in this industry, but I mean, the people that I know, you know, really personally that are just, you know, very, very successful, have been doing it for a long time. I guess what kind of kept me into it was a couple different things. I mean, I think number one, really for me, the biggest thing was probably lifestyle. It was lifestyle and location of where I could live. I mean, that was probably number one. I mean, I've always been a coastal boy. I mean, that's, you know, on the water, surf, fish, boat, you know, all those things. And I always knew from a young age, I said, that's where I want to live, you know, and this industry really relates to people that like those kind of leisure lifestyles, active, have hobbies like that. And that's one kind of common theme when I talk to a lot of other people who own businesses. Are like, man, I just want to ski, or I just wanted to snowboard. I wanted to do this or that, and then now create a business. I'm like, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I think those are the people that are the real winners. They can do what they want to do, live where they want to live, and have a business that they like. And but that was probably number one. And then number two is, then I put my business hat on, and I'm going, wow, you can make a lot of money doing this if you do it right. And if you think you're as good as you are, at some point along the evolution, if you start working for somebody, you gotta try to do it yourself. And that's easier said than done, especially for me. I mean, I had at the time, what launched me to do it myself was buying a small business, buying a company, not just, I don't have that story, and there's many of them that people say, well, I owned a condo and I was renting myself, and then people were asking me to do it, and then all of a sudden I got 400 properties. Right? That's an awesome story. That's not my story. But we started and identified an opportunity on Topsail Island, and that's when I moved from the Outer Banks down here to the southern part of the coast of North Carolina. And our goal was, this is the business hat, right? It's like, okay, I have the Outer Banks mentality. There's a bunch of huge companies up there, been doing it for a long time, very systematized. I said, we can do that same thing down here in North Carolina, which really those kinds of businesses didn't exist. There's a lot of good companies down here, don't get me wrong, but they're smaller, they're geographically isolated to one market. And we said, well, we could just do that and be in multiple markets, and all of a sudden you have a big business. So I'm not trying to be the guy who raises money and gets 5,000 properties all over the country. Like that's not what I do. That's really not what I want to do. I'm all about going deep, deep connections with your clients, with your guests, with your community, and kind of owning the space that I'm in right now in our little region. So that's where we're at.
That little region, are you classifying that little region, just from understanding, basically from North Topsail down to South Carolina to Myrtle, like in that area there right now, or do you have do you have bigger, grander plans?
Well, yeah, I mean, so right now that's it. It's Topsail down to the South Carolina line. I mean, that's where our sweet spot is. Would I look at opportunities in similar markets, in the Carolinas? Yeah, I mean, I would. But it's like a lot of folks, like right now I'm doing this all myself, right? I'm it. And I can't hit singles, right? I got to hit home runs. And so everything we look at, it's gotta work.
I love the baseball analogies too. I love the baseball analogies. And Mike, it's interesting. I'm a diehard baseball fan. That's my sport. I follow, and you're not the first, and you're not even the second baseball personality we've had on here. It's super interesting. We Vector Stays used to catch.
Mickey.
Yeah, Mickey, and that you played now. Tell us a little bit about you played ball in college.
Yeah, I played at ECU, East Carolina. At the time we were, let me brag a little bit, but at the time, when I was there, we were pretty much a top 25 team. My senior year, we were up in the top 5 at one point.
Nice.
And lost right before the College World Series. So we had some good teams. It was a great experience. I certainly wouldn't be here where I'm at today without it. Discipline, network, just the whole 9 yards. And I think that's kind of really carried through, my career, is like that dedication and hard work. It's like, if you got to do something nobody else will to get to the next level. And that's sort of what kind of carries me through. Yeah.
I wonder what it is too about baseball, and maybe it's all sports, but baseball in particular for me, and I'm wondering how and why it translates so well to business, because obviously in our industry, a lot of baseball players and baseball management they go on to be very successful in other business, endeavors as well. Is it the chess type, back and forth, it's the long game, it's that marathon. You kind of alluded to it earlier, as opposed to just a grind for a short amount of time. Like, I wonder if that has any sort of significance to it as well.
I don't know. Maybe we should write a book one day, but it was, probably the discipline factor, probably the strategy, and probably just sheer competitiveness, right? I mean, if you play any sport, it doesn't have to be college, it can be anything, but right. You have some kind of competitive fire in you, and you don't have to be an athlete. You could be a competitive chess player, you can be a competitive whatever, but I think that does come into factor in business big time, because it's like, hey, I don't want to lose, right? I mean, like there's certain things that you're going to do what you have to do to win, whether it be a client, whether it be a deal, whether it be whatever. And, that's probably part of my deal. So.
Yeah.
So I think we want to kind of touch on, it's 2022. We got a full year ahead of us. You alluded to a trip you just got back from over the Christmas and holiday break here, where a kind of a light went on, a little light bulb lit up, and it's can you maybe want to tell us a little bit about that and your thoughts on what 2022 is going to bring for us here in the States?
Oh man, yeah. So we're recording this, at the beginning of the year. So, unfortunately, COVID, the new variant here is kind of rearing its ugly head. And we were talking about this at the beginning, but my wife and my children and I had a nice vacation plan after Christmas. We had planned it all year, going to Mexico, right? Going to the beach, just going to chill out. Stayed at a nice all-inclusive resort. So in December, right before we were leaving, the U.S. announces these new travel restrictions that if you do travel internationally, to get back, you have to show a negative COVID test 1 day before your departure. Mm-hmm. So, okay, we'll have to deal with that. We felt we're vaccinated. I mean, I'll tell you, so we were like, we felt confident, we're good, and went down to Mexico. I didn't feel the greatest, but chalked it up to, hey, I went from cold to hot really fast. So probably allergies or whatever it is. And the day before, we go to the hotel. They offered the test. We do it. Everybody's negative, and then mine comes back a little bit later positive. Like, oh my God, So we have to scramble a little bit. We figure out what that means, what we have to do. And basically, they had to quarantine me at the hotel because I could only get tested at the hotel once a day, but they had other testing facilities in Mexico. I'll talk about that in a second, but, had to get quarantined for my family. I mean, I couldn't go. I could not keep my family there and the risk that they become positive, and then we have to wait longer.
Right.
So basically, I had to send them on, my wife with 3 little kids flying out of Mexico by themselves, in a place they've never been. And it was a little scary. It was, not a lot of information up front. Had to stay in my room, couldn't go anywhere. Was able to have, meals delivered and stuff like that from the hotel, which was nice. And they did do a good job. So I do have to commend them on that. With the whole process. But yeah, I was stuck there for a few days, not knowing when I was going to get home. Finally went to another testing facility in Mexico in a little trailer, in an alley somewhere. And I said, look, man, I need a test. I got to get out of here. And they gave me an antigen test. 30 minutes later, results came back negative. Hopped on the phone, gave my plane ticket, and next day I was out of there. But when that whole series of events and that whole process, we don't know how long that is going to last. Those restrictions are going to last. If we look back at 2020, 2021 in our industry, domestic travel is about to explode again in 2022. I mean, that was my whole view on this, because people still want to go. They still want to do things. But as soon as they hear a story like mine, and I'm not trying to tell people not to travel internationally. I mean, we went and had a phenomenal time. It's just that is a risk of doing it. But the everyday person is going to go, I'm not doing that. I have kids. There's no way. I'm just going to, we're going to the mountains. We're going to the beach. We're going to rent a vacation home. So, that whole thing just really perked me up. And, I guess you could say that's my 2022 prediction is everybody hold on to reins, because I think it's going to be another very, very, very busy year.
Keep holding on. Keep holding on.
Keep holding on, yeah. Maybe double down a little bit. Maybe get another stronger rope or something this time.
Oh, man. Hire some more cleaners.
Is it really going to be as strong, though? I got a question, though, because this is my thing. I've been thinking about this over the entire break. I have friends who are a little younger, and they're gone. They're in Barcelona. They all went to Mexico. My sister and her family went to Mexico. I had people that are traveling through Europe. I think the younger people don't really care, right? At the end of the day, from what I'm seeing, they don't care about the restrictions. They don't care about the other stuff. They're just going to go. They're tired of sitting around. Even my sister, because my sister's situation, like they luckily all tested positive in time to leave Mexico. But had they been stuck, it was the same. They had my nephew. They had, an entourage of, it would have been a problem if one of them would have had to stay. And so I think those considerations are definitely going to keep people closer to home. But my other question is just the economics of it all. Are people still going to have the money to travel in 2022? All the stimmy money is gone, right? The stimulus money is gone. People's working situations are, I won't say going back to normal, but there's a sense of normalcy now where people know where in what their work situations are. They're either at home on some type of hybrid schedule. I think that's going to also be the determining factor too. Like what's going on with with people's work situations and kids' school situations. Because if kids aren't able to just go anywhere, are people still going to travel the same way that they did in 2020 and 2021? And I think it's going to be super interesting, but I don't hear anybody talking about the other economic factors that would roll into what the success of this year is going to look like. So I don't know. That's my thought. I want to get your thoughts on that too, man. I know how you.
I'm with you. I'll live through the great financial recession, and so I'm always like skeptical of stuff, right? I'm like, oh my God, we had a great year. We're going to be out of business next year. That's my paradigm, right? So, but I can tell you this: our early booking data, just within my company, we're up 50%. Year to date. Versus last year, which was, incredible. So I'm just looking at it from my perspective. Like, and I have my internal data, and then I have my experience, right? And I'm talking to my friends and my little circle with kids and families, which is our target demographic. Is the families. Right. People are, they're just not going to do it, right? They're not going to own a cruise right now. Definitely, they're just not going to risk. So
I agree with you 100% on that. That they're not going back to cruises. I think they're shifting their demographics, even in terms of where they're trying to travel.
Right. Yeah. And the economic factors. If you look at, I try to pay attention to this. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I try to keep a ear to the ground. Mm-hmm. All the economic factors right now are pretty positive. Heading into 2022, unemployment, is down. Wages are up. Look at the earnings from companies in the stock market are like at record highs. So there's money in the system, from our government, obviously, and then there's money out there. I don't know if that's going to be a problem in 2022. Now down the road, when some of this has to be repaid, that's another question. But, as of right now, I think 2022 is going to be a pretty hot market for the vacation rental industry.
I have a very similar feeling that 22 is going to be, I think it has, potential to break even the previous record that we just broke. As far as, that's kind of where I'm seeing it. I'm thinking, it's 23 or 24. One of those years, we're going to see a sharp decline and it's kind of reset it. But it's not this year.
No,
right.
And I don't know about
I think it's going to be
one.
interesting.
Yeah, I don't know about Sharp. I mean, this is not a 08 situation, right? Or
right.
It's
right.
What I've tried to beat the drum on, and you can kind of read my article on Matt Landau's blog, is, hey guys, like, everything's pretty hot right now. I would just throttle down just a tad and kind of take your blinders off. Just make sure you're making appropriate decisions, for the long term. Don't feel like every year is going to be up and up, because we know that's just not going to be the case. And what really kind of spurred me for that, I follow a lot of on Twitter, a lot of groups that are buying and investing in short-term rentals, on these online pages, on these other Facebook groups, and this and that. So anyway, I just like to consume all this information to get a finger on the pulse of what people are thinking. And there's a lot of exuberance out there around short-term vacation rentals, like just stuff that just does not make any sense, right? I mean, you're like, hey man, my appraisal came back, $50,000 under what I offered. I'm still going to buy it, and I'm not going to do inspections. I'm like, are you an idiot? Like,
yeah.
They're like, well, the income's X. I'm like, yeah, for now. What happens if the income goes down 20%, right? What are you guys going to do? And, people are buying stuff at 10% down, and they're trying to get 4 properties, and they want to scale. And I'm like, man, I feel like I've seen this before, and it generally doesn't work out.
Right. You think?
Speaking of 08, 09, right? Like, again, that's my fear, Mike. Honestly, that's my fear. And I think you put it best. I hope, don't get me wrong, I hope we have phenomenal years moving forward. The realist in me knows that there's going to be a reset. I hope when that reset comes, we look at it realistically and see where it lands us, versus creating the hysteria that everyone's kind of just like, oh, with this pins and needles. And then as soon as things kind of level set, which I think is going to happen first, I hope that doesn't cause, a tidal wave going in the wrong direction of people's kind of fears.
Agreed. Well, I will say this, though. I feel like our floor has been reset. So, in 19, our floor might have been here, for where we were as an industry. Now it's up here, right? So I do think there's a lot of sustainable positives that have come out of all this. But the people that are going to continue to succeed are the ones that, have, number one, have a system, have a process from a management perspective, who provide the service, who are really heads down, making sure that they take care of their owners. And then the people that are investing, are investing in quality assets, that have the locations, that have the amenities. But there's a lot of people buying very marginal properties right now because anything and everything is renting, and they're paying premiums for these marginal assets, and they're going to get their butts kicked I think at some point at the end of the day. So.
Yeah, the key to all this is profitability, exactly. And, is it make fiscal sense in the long run, not just right now? And, I want to kind of go back on something I said. I said there'd be a sharp decline, and I don't mean that in a sharp decline, again, more to the floor, as in the growth is gonna subside. Yeah. Right now, if you're looking at a graph, it's pretty much at a 45. And it's not going to be, and we're going to slow, that's going to kind of go ahead and decrease. But yeah,
so you're taking back your doomsday scenario.
What's that?
So you're not going doomsday on us. Is that what you're saying?
No, definitely not doomsday. I like that our floor has been raised, and I like that analogy, and I think that's to be true. Big news, we like to touch on the news here as well. Sonder moves a step closer, to going public here with their SPAC. What are your thoughts on some of these larger companies? Right now it's looking like Oyo, Sonder, Inspirado, I think is another one. There's a few that are poised to go public. this year. Obviously we know of the big boy that went public last year. Obviously we know of the money that Milo and V-Trips are doing in his growth with his recent acquisitions. What are your thoughts on how that's going to affect the market? And is it a false sense, or is it, what is that?
I don't know. I mean, on one level, I don't really care, if you ask me. On the other level, from just an industry observer, it's very intriguing. In a weird twist, I am now an owner of Vacasa. So how about that? I own 100 shares.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. It's certainly going to put more eyeballs on the industry, but I wouldn't be out there just kind of doing jumping jacks right now. I mean, I think a lot of this is going to be, how does Vacasa perform? And I don't really know much. I don't know enough about Saunders' model to really have an opinion on them. I mean, at one point they were doing arbitrage. I think now they're shifting focus or doing something else. But
everyone was focused on arbitrage had to shift at some point, or they'd end up
out of business.
Yeah. So I mean, and so Vacasa, all eyes on Vacasa from a performance perspective. I mean, what Steve Milo is doing is, I think pretty smart. I mean, he's, on one level, that's what we're doing down here, but obviously a much smaller scale. I mean, he's taking good companies that are making money already, bring them under the fold, and then centralizing just certain services to make things more efficient, but leaving sort of the operational component intact, brands intact to continue to operate as is. And I'm like, you know what, that's a smart way to do it. Look, you go in and you start ripping off 30-year-old brands and trying to slap your logo on it and changing managers. I mean, that's just a recipe for disaster, in our industry. But, and I think you'll probably see more. I think more and more people are doing that similar concept. I mean, there's Village, there's, Sunset down there in Hilton Head. There's some of these guys that are doing that model. And I think good companies are going to continue to be at a premium for a little while in our industry for people looking to acquire. But, the public thing's just so far removed from my gate. I just don't know. There's probably a lot of more smart people that can tell you about that than me.
Well, let's talk about your growth, though. You talked about, what you're doing is a similar model to Milo and V-Trips, let's talk about, you came in as what was the company you purchased when you came in Topsail?
Yeah, so I bought, it was a 40-year-old company. It's called Topsail Realty. In fact, Ben Edwards put me in touch with the seller. He called me up one day. I was on the Outer Banks, working for a resort. And he said, "Hey, man, what are you doing?" I said, "Nothing." He said, "I got a company in Topsail. You know where that is?" I'm like, "I know where that is." In fact, my sister-in-law and brother-in-law have had a beach house there for years. So I used to go down to Topsail and used to vacation there and hang out. But so that's what got me in the door. At the time, I think they had about 150, maybe under 150 properties. And, the idea there was to kind of use that as my platform, right? And then kind of grow around that in some of these other adjacent markets from there. And that's what we've been able to do. And then, what was really got kind of on our radar and got hot over the past 3 or so years is these motels and inns we've been acquiring and renovating. And that's kind of turned out to be this entirely different track of business that we didn't even think about, a handful of years ago, that's been phenomenally positive for us. And we've just reallocated some capital to that. And, it's what it's done is, number one, is mitigated our risk as a business, in my opinion, right? So instead of being 1-year contracts, with all these homeowners, now we own a segment of our inventory that kind of hedges maybe some of that ebb and flow, of churn and turnover and this and that. And then we own the asset. So we're building equity in an asset improving the asset. Now we're kind of commercial real estate investors as well. So, that's been really, it's been challenging, but it's been fun. But it's really, we might not have the property count that some of these other big guys have, but I mean, we have a whole nother segment of profitability now that wasn't there before. So
what's the percentage of doors in assets that you own compared to doors in homeowners, do you think?
So what do you mean, the percentage of what?
Like the unit count as in doors.
Unit count. So we have
like the doors you have in your motels and hotels.
Well, I'll tell you. I mean, numbers. We're about 375 properties under management, and we're about 75 rooms with our motels and inns. Right.
That's a nice mix.
Great diversity. Yeah, it's great diversity, like you said, and it's that 75 doors is not circling, or it's a little more solid and controllable, right?
Yeah, it is. It's interesting because we, the thesis when we went into this was it was a little motel. We partnered with a real estate investor in Topsail, and he's been great.
It's a loggerhead, right? Is that what it started out with?
Loggerhead, yeah, Loggerhead Inn. Yep. So we said, we can operate this thing like a hybrid vacation rental. Right, we have all the infrastructure already in place. We're going to put keyless locks on all the doors. We're going to put, put a manager on site. We already have a laundry facility. We have everything. Take reservations. And so I bet you we can operate this thing very profitably. Because, and also, on Topsail, John, you're well, there's like nowhere to stay in a hotel. There's like nothing. I mean, there's, super old mom and pops. And so we were like, man, we would, number one, we'd have a moat. We have no competition, and we can provide that 1, 2, 3 night stay that everything else is weekly vacation homes in our market. So now we have 2 different type of products, and we could cross market from the homeowner, the guests that stayed in our homes, and we have this huge database of guests already. So we said, all right, let's do it. And, it's evolved over the past handful of years, but now, man, we got this prized asset that just churns it out, and it's been very, very well received. So. And
the modifications you've done on it and the improvements, it's pretty impressive. It's nice.
Yeah, it was. Oh my God, I should show some of those pictures over the process. But I wouldn't say, hey, go out and buy a hotel and fix it up, because you can get destroyed doing that if you're not careful. Luckily I had a great partner on that deal, and we were able to see it through. But we did the same thing down in Oak Island, and we just got done with that first round of renovations. Same thing. We were able to buy these things right, so we kind of got lucky at the time. But that one I own on my own, and same thing. Oak Island is very similar to Topsail. I mean, there's just no hotels, all traditional vacation homes, and we have a great little property. And our goal is to sort of, obviously, really, really improve that, and then grow property management around that operation. So kind of a reverse kind of deal down there. So.
Was that your first jump into Oak Island, or did you have any? Because you didn't really have any placement there, right?
No, and I wasn't specifically targeting Oak Island or anything. I mean, it was just that property happened to be there, and I kept looking at it and looking at it and looking at it. And it's like, finally I was like, all right, let me see what this thing's all about. And, it took a while. It was about a year negotiation back and forth. And, then another year we've been, I basically lost all of this year with renovations. So look, again, it's a commitment to do that kind of stuff. But if you can see it through, I mean, for us anyway, at the end of the day, I think it's going to be a real winner for us, as we keep going. So,
agree.
And did I just see that you are now in? I mean, you've kind of been all circling around Wilmington area, but now you are in. Is it Wilmington Beaches now? I mean, because you were on Curie, right? Previously.
So on Carolina Beach, we have a vacation rental operation on Carolina and Curie Beach, which is Pleasure Island.
Right.
But so we just acquired a small company on Wrightsville Beach, which is sort of right in the middle between Topsail and Carolina and Curry Beach.
Right.
So, and Wrightsville is a really high end, kind of right in the middle of Wilmington. It's beautiful, very, very, very cool spot. And we're able to partner with a great guy. He was looking to kind of expand his brokerage in long-term business and sell his short-term business. And, we happen to be a good partner for that. And so now we'll have an operation there as well. That brings us about 40 properties on Wrightsville, which isn't a huge market. So.
Yeah, but it's a different market too. It's I've driven down that road. Some of those homes are pretty.
Yeah, it's kind of like Palm Beach, right? So none of the values of houses make any sense, right? It's like, hey, here's a shack on the ocean, $5 million, right? Oh, okay, great, sounds good,
right?
But some of these families have owned these things for just generations, and they don't care. There's some companies there that have done vacation rental management for quite a while. They're good companies. This was just an opportunity for us, and we just feel like we can apply our model there, and be another spot for us to grow. So
nice.
Tell us about, for those that don't know, you spent quite a few years in different leadership capacity with VRMA. You mentioned you went to your first VRMA probably early in 2005, and maybe prior to that, I'm not sure. But tell us about, leading up through. You did a year as the president of VRMA. Tell us about that. And
yeah, so you don't get paid to do that. FYI, in case anybody's interested. But yeah, so early on when I got involved in VRMA, I was like, I love this. I love meeting the people. I love talking to them. Like this is exactly kind of my thing. And I got involved early on when I started going, and luckily, Stuart and some other employers let me do this. I was working on the conference planning committee and doing stuff at the conferences, just helping out, whatever I could, and just kind of got in the middle of what you have to do. And then eventually someone recommended, say, hey, you should run for the board. Maybe one day. And then eventually I ended up doing it. So when I served on the board for 6 years. It was 3 consecutive 2-year terms, and then 1 year as president. But when I got on the board, there's a transition. So the transition in just pretty much everything. From the management company who was overseeing VRMA to wholesale new board. And we had run into a little bit of, financial problems just over the course of a handful of years. And it was nobody's fault. It was just stuff that happens, right? You have all these great intentions and you have these projects you're working on, and then all of a sudden you look up and you're like, oh crap, none of this has kind of returned anything right now. So when I got on the board, it was a little contentious, and we all kind of had to come together and make some hard decisions. But primarily, number one, we switched management companies. We brought in really the first time a professional management organization to oversee VRMA, and that was huge for us, right? Because we'd always had, it was the Sarkas, it was husband and wife, and they had done it from basically inception, and great people. But the way the industry was going, and we saw this was, this is really not mom and pop industry anymore. Things are really changing. So we felt like we needed to professionalize from the management a little bit more, which we did. And then number two was, we got to hammer down and, number one, grow membership, and number two, we got to fund our reserves in this organization, or we're gonna be screwed. And that was our go-to. We had to forego some of these projects that were happening before, TV shows and this and that. We had to just cut them. But over the course of 5 or so years, we built the reserves up. Membership grew. This is when our conferences were 2,000 people. It was crazy, man. And when I cycled off, we still have great people on the board. A lot of the same folks, and they got hit with COVID, right? Yeah. Which really, and now look back on it now, and I'm like, oh my God, if we hadn't have made some decisions or done some stuff early on, there might not be VRMA when COVID hit. There just might not have been. And
it's crazy. Toby had had a heck of a run. I mean, think about his presidency through all of that, and that's what a hell of a year and a half.
Yeah. And Toby did a phenomenal job. I mean, he was always a phenomenal board member. Did a phenomenal job as president. Jody Rafosco, all of that. Obviously phenomenal. And I mean, the whole board together with them. I mean, we had the best leaders at the time when that happened we could have possibly had, and I truly believe that. And I'm thankful for them for steering the ship through all that. I think I'm not on the board anymore, so please don't. Right. This is no inside baseball, right? No inside information. Right. I mean, but I feel like VRMA may have to pivot just a slightly bit on some of our event strategies and some of that in light of the new world, right? With COVID, and then a lot of these smaller conferences and bite-sized educational opportunities are out there. But still, in my opinion, VRMA is the gold standard when it comes to education, when it comes to networking, when it comes to our industry. If you want to be a professional, like, you got to be involved. You got to be involved at some level, right? So,
well, Mateo and I are both heavily involved in VRMA.
Yep. But this is the thing, though. I think Mike's absolutely right, and I don't want to highlight. We're all into giving flowers, while people are here. Again, I don't think a lot of people know the work that you've done on the background and that your boards did in the background that actually gave life to the organization. And while these things are changing for the organization, my thing has always been more membership breathes life into the organization, and being able to accurately. And this is my thing. When I've talked to people, I was like, VRMA should be the foremost entity in the short-term hospitality space. I don't care what you call it, vacation rentals, short-term rentals. VRMA should be that entity of professionals within this space that, is the go-to for PR and media. So we don't have these clowns on TV, bad-mouthing the industry and associating everything with Airbnb, and really building up, whether you're just getting into the industry, whether you're an intern that's interested in the industry, whether you're a seasoned vet in the industry, VRMA should be the one go-to that has everything for us within that space, because we have the footprint to do it. And anyway, so John mentioned it. That's why we're excited, and we are dedicated to working to make it such with the things that we can do. But thank you for laying that ground, the grounds for us to do the things that we do, especially around DEI and all the other things. Those things, they need to be supported. And,
right. You're the chair of the DEI subcommittee, or co-chair. And I'm on two committees. I'm on that DEI subcommittee. I'm also on the membership committee now, under Jody. So we're expecting some big things with that. And, I think Miller's going to do a great job in pushing us in the right direction. I'm curious what's going to happen with Chicago now, with the mayor coming out, and basically, and what that's going to be like, if that's going to reduce the number of attendees significantly. I'm hoping that subsides quickly, because
when is that conference? Is it in the spring?
April.
It's in April. Yeah.
April. The spring forum. It's in April. So we'll see what that brings. But I'm super positive. We're making some great strides in membership. The end of the year, we saw some great things, and again, like Mateo said, all wouldn't be possible without the prior leadership bringing us into and putting us in a solid place to keep, things have to change. And I think, like, for the most part, they're doing it.
And I definitely, I hate to name names, because I don't want to leave anybody out, but
right.
Ben Edwards was a major factor in that. Steve Milo was a major factor in that. I mean, Carol Sharoff, Maureen Reagan. Again, I hate to leave. Please, if I haven't said your name, I'm not leaving you out. But it was definitely tough. I mean, and we're excited about it. You know, unfortunately, we got dealt a bad hand. Everybody got dealt a bad hand with this COVID stuff. But I mean, making our way out of it. But you know, we'll see what the future holds with the events. I mean, like you said, it
keep
may be
making lemonade, man.
Yeah.
So you mentioned your prediction for 2022 is that you think that, you know, obviously we're going to have another record year, potentially bigger than we've ever had. To hold on, get a stronger rope. Is there anything else, like do you think you see, you know, we talk a lot about branding on here. We talk, you know, and we talk a lot about, you know, for example, what you're doing with Carolina Retreats. You know, you're building a brand, and that brand is recognizable. And there's other brands that we talk to that are recognizable, that are doing a good thing. And, you know, do you have any other predictions, or what is going to move the needle moving forward?
I mean, it's hard for me to predict. I mean, I you know, always hate to do that. I mean, I guess if I'm looking at, you know, the next 6, 12, 18 months out, just for me, you know, I think you got to be careful with shiny object syndrome a little bit. You know, there's just so much, and I'm always just amazed. Like, can an industry get more fragmented as it gets consolidated? Because that's exactly what's happening, right? I mean, you know, every time there's an acquisition, there's 2 or 3 more companies or people that sprout up, right? And then another thing you're going to see is more and more investors that get into this to own the inventory, right? They're interested in owning 5, 10, 20 properties and then running them themselves. Like, they don't want to use a third-party manager. That further fragments the industry, and they're using, you know, the channels as their software components, as their, you know, as their billing collector, as everything.
Yep.
So, you know, it's just, I think it's going to get more hairy before it gets, you know, more clear in our business of how it kind of shapes out from a professional perspective, in my opinion. But, you know, I think eventually the music's going to stop with just this feeding frenzy of people buying properties for short-term rentals. I think things are going to slow down a little bit. And, you know, as interest rates go up, as, you know, all kinds of things happen. I mean, you know, you just got to be prepared for all that, because it'll happen at some point.
No, great points.
And I think it's important too. I love one of the things you said earlier too, is like, you're taking this, and to use another baseball analogy, kind of one at bat at a time, right? You know your market, you know where you are. I think there's a lot of, we talk about brands all the time. We throw Vacasa around, we throw all these other names out there that are around, but you know, you look at what Milo's doing, you look at what Vacasa's doing. There's so many other entities. You look at what Dennis and Cassiola's doing. There's so many brands that are valid and are in place and are just focused on doing what they do well. And, you know, we keep like asking, well, you guys gonna follow this or follow that? No, they're following their own track. Right. You're following your own track. You're building out your own business. You're not modeling after anybody else. You're not trying to beat anybody else to the punch. Right. And I think it speaks a lot to your success and the fact that you're able to run a great business that keeps growing, and you seem like you're panicking, or you seem pretty good with where you're at. Yeah. And you seem to have a good map. Yeah.
The most powerful thing you can have in a business is the ability to tell somebody no, right? So if I don't want to work with a homeowner, guess what? I'm going to tell you no. And it's not going to take food off my table. And now I'm at that position as a business that we can do that. And it just makes everything more clear of where we're trying to go. And, you know, again, I'm not trying to have every single homeowner management in the 200-mile radius. I just can't. I don't want to do it. And you don't have to do that to have a good business in our industry. That's a misnomer. If you're getting into this industry, you don't have to raise money or be this huge conglomerate to be successful, right? Just, you know, one owner at a time, one guest at a time, you know, do what's right by people, and you'll have a good business. So.
I like to call that scaling appropriately.
Right.
That's a gem right there. Yep.
Mike, thanks so much for joining us, man. We really appreciate you. Being the first of 2022, we appreciate this is going to come out. I mean, for you, it's coming out this week. I mean, so we record on Tuesdays, it come out on Thursdays. So Thursday morning, this will be live. We appreciate you joining us. Thanks so much, man.
No, honored. I appreciate it, guys, and Happy New Year for sure.
Hey, man, Happy New Year.